Hi, and welcome to today's session of The Library is Open. Today we have joining with us Spencer Smith from McKinney Public Library, myself, Jessica Zarrow, and Nate Carullo. Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hey, Spencer. So thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am the director of the McKinney Public Library System in McKinney, Texas, which is north of Dallas. I've been here for a little over 2 years. Before that, I was with Little Elm, which is in the same area. I was there for a few years. And I've also worked for venture capital firms and larger systems throughout my career. I am from Texas. It's great, but I've lived all over too. So that's my professional background.
Nice. So you've worked with more than just McKinney with Cohoc, Little Elm. Tell us about your decision-making process.
Well, when I got to Little Elm, we were on a different system, a proprietary system. I was not very happy with it in the quality of data extraction. I'm a very data-driven person. I need information before I make a decision. I can just make stuff up, but I try not to be arbitrary. And I couldn't get that from the system we had. And so I remember, I believe it was Nate actually at a library conference. I was looking around, not getting a whole lot out of the exhibit floor. And then I stumble across Nate, who's got it up on a PC. And I'm like, well, this is what I want to do. And I start walking away and Nate's like, no, we can do that. So I was able to actually see it and get in, and then he sent the proposal and everything clicked from there. And, I was a believer from pretty close to day one on what it did. And it was so much better than what we had before. And we were starting fresh, and it was a great tool for me to have, especially with the smaller library that didn't have the resources necessarily to go out and do a lot of major third-party vendors and things like that to get things where we needed them. And then when I came over to McKinney, we were on a proprietary platform as well. And some of the staff here wasn't happy with the customer service. And I said, well, I was working with a company that had great customer service. Why don't we look into what it would take, to make a change and what the benefits are, pluses and minuses. And then, a little while later and some long conversations, decided to go with Cohoc again.
Nice.
Excellent. So besides Cohoc, Spencer, have you used any other open source products, or prior to Cohoc, did you have experience with any of the open source?
There's like Office products, Open Office, things like that. Cohoc was my first time really professionally kind of investing in open source for the workplace. Not just finding out what I could get to use for free at home. But since then, we do have a process that, if we're going out for something new, we do make sure that we look at what open source options there are.
Awesome. So I assume that you see some big advantages for libraries in utilizing an open source solution. What are some of the big advantages that you would see?
Well, with Cohoc specifically, the community is great. It's so much better than what I'd experienced on proprietary products. The fact that if we want something changed, added, tweaked, we can work with the community, and someone else might already be doing it on their own little system and have solved the problem, or that maybe we're the only people who want to do it. But once we say, hey, what about this? Everybody else is like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And so we can work as a community to come together and solve the problem. And there's money involved sometimes, but sometimes it's just a passion product for people. And so they'll help out and want to figure out a way to make it better. There's more of an ownership of the product by the users.
That kind of takes us right into our next question. So recently we've noticed a trend with a lot of libraries reaching out to us and asking us about working with third-party vendors to analyze their data about their collection, what's being used, what's not being used, things like that. And generally we'll set up a report in Cohoc, extract data that Cohoc has so they can see how many holds, checkouts, renewals, these items have, and then it gets sent off to a third-party vendor, for example, Collection HQ. on our listserv where we're talking about the open source community where people can share ideas. This was one of the hot items. And Spencer, you shared what you've developed in your system to get those same results. So talk to us a little bit how that happened. Did you work with Collection HQ first and then decide to, analyze the data on your own? Or did you approach this from a different direction?
From a different direction.
Okay.
My first kind of need to understand the data behind collection management was I was in the Fort Worth library system just as a librarian one, and I had a small amount of money to spend on my collection in my branch to make it, to fill holes and get what people wanted. But I had to know that there's a difference between what people want and what I have experienced people asking for, because a lot of people don't ask, they just don't get it, or it checks out and you never see because they know where it is. And so I used to run some basic SQL reporting in the system that Fort Worth had. And then when I got to Little Elm, I wasn't able to do that. I had no ability to do that. And the other thing I didn't have was money. When I got to Little Elm, we were operating at around $8 per capita. And at that level, you can't afford a collection HQ, for example. And it's not a knock on their business model. They're just not set up to sell to libraries that operate on $8 per capita. It doesn't make any sense. And so I, tried to recreate some of the numbers I used, and then I, really got into it. And the fact that, benefit of open source, at least with Cohoc, that I didn't mention is I can see the whole schema, right? So I can go in, and even if I don't know how to access it because I don't know the terminology and the taxonomy, I can actually go in there and figure it out. Coupled with the reports library that's also available, so I had a starting block to go from, and then I could just grab pieces and manipulate, and also with the support from Bywater, if I broke anything, they could fix it and make it work, which was also very helpful. And so I was able to kind of say, well, how much data do I want? And then it ended up I wanted a lot. The other thing we had there when you operate on that low dollar figure is by the end of my time there, we had $40,000 annually for our book budget to serve 33,000 people.
Wow.
And you can't do that with arbitrary decision making. You can't do that going by your gut. You have to kind of know that what you're going to get is going to check out, and it's going to check out X number of times a year. Otherwise, you're wasting money, and you're not going to grow. So I developed kind of the very basic report that I did send out on that the partners listserv, where I just kind of broke it down by collection code, and then figured out with the collection codes, versus how much we have of them, how often are they moving, is it carrying its own weight for the library? And then there are a lot that aren't. We had certain sections that were circulating massive amounts, but we only had a few of them. So we figured out, hey, now we get to have some data to show us where we should put our money, where we shouldn't. And we saw large increases in circulation over the years I was there. And a big part of that I attribute to just being able to pull the data out and smartly, assess where we should spend our limited budget.
It's fascinating. So I have one of the reports sent up that you shared with the list, and it basically has all of the collection codes written out, and then you have how many that you have, your holdings, and what the circ is. And for example, I'm looking at one where it's like juvenile fiction, right? That has a high. But the other one, easy reader fiction, of course, we see in those picture books. So do you get together with your librarians on a monthly basis and look at this data together, or do you have like a team of individuals that do that?
No, we distribute at McKinney. We distribute selection through all librarians.
Okay.
So everybody's got responsibility for materials collection. So I do share this on a monthly basis, and you'll also notice one of the columns there is the annual turnover rate. So this is a monthly report, and so that just extrapolates if every month was as busy as this month, this is what this collection would turn over. So the one top of the list is, let's go second, because the top is a special collection for us.
Okay.
You have adult biographies. So system-wide, or at our branch library, adult biographies would turn over an average of 6.14 times if every month was as busy as October. Luckily, other months are much busier, but we know our goal as a system is to reach 10 turnovers. Our goal, kind of medium-term goal.
Yeah.
So we're saying, you know what, biographies aren't doing it. Adult biographies are only getting 6. But, you know, as a system, is that okay because it's made up for by adult Blu-rays or by, you know, early reader fiction? And we see, you know, in some things in biographies, particular, have this superstars category, which just means that's a big gap between the size of the collection percentage and the percentage of circulation.
Okay.
And so when that gap is large in the negative, meaning that it takes up much more shelf space than it circulates, that means there's a problem with that collection somewhere.
Yeah.
Either there's too much of it, it's dated, it's the wrong stuff. So it doesn't necessarily mean don't spend money there. It just means, hey, look at this much more closely to figure out what kind of money you need to spend there. Are you spending too much? Are you not spending enough in the right sections? And then I have it broken down by branch also in that report, to do the same thing, and then we look at it holistically for the system. So when you look at a section like adult nonfiction, and you see that there's a big gap and it's not turning over very much, why is that? And then you look and you say, well, you know, the average date of publication is, you know, 2001, so everything is 17 years old. Maybe that has something to do with it, and you get to dig in with some of those other reports and see what there is. And then easy reader fiction, just throw money at it. Just buy 10 more copies of everything because we haven't gotten close to meet demand. So it goes both ways.
Fascinating. Have you talked to other libraries about this and or worked with other libraries?
I have. I'm part of a group that's it's public library administrators in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I've shared this with them and helped them, you know, that sounds arrogant. I didn't help them do it, just explained it to them like I explained it to you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're using it. Some of them are Collection HQ members and or customers.
Yeah.
And so they've seen it, and, you know, I think they maybe like the aspects that it's a one button push thing and they don't have to think about it too much. For me, I want to know what that calculation is, because I don't necessarily know that their calculation makes sense for our location. So with this, I can get my data out and I can calculate it in a way that I can understand and I can explain and I can tweak if I need to.
Yeah.
And then when I shared it on the list, I had a few other libraries, or at least staff from other libraries, contact me and kind of ask, you know, how it worked and, you know, what if this, and tweak it. So, and I also presented some of the basic stuff to a Kansas group via Skype a couple of years ago. It was funny because I actually wasn't on Cohoc at the time. It was before we'd migrated, so I had to use little elm data, export into spreadsheets to kind of show them what to do.
Cool. So let me ask this, Spencer. Do you use purchase suggestions, and does that tie into anything?
We do use purchase suggestions.
Okay.
We have always, even under the old system, we had a purchase suggestion form, and it was used, but we never really notified them because it wasn't automated. So now we notify them. We do use them. We also use the hold ratio.
The report.
That's a very powerful feature for us.
Yep.
And we make sure that we try to put in records 3 months out from publication, so that we can analyze the hold ratio before publication, so we can up the purchase number of copies. But the purchase suggestions go through, and we have a pretty good track record of getting them. We can't get everything. A lot of stuff is just an interlibrary loan candidate. Just, you know, one person is going to want that book a year, and that doesn't meet our threshold for what we need. But typically we find if we get something that we missed in the selection process, that one person asking for it in a city of 170,000 people means that there are many more people who want it. They just didn't ask.
Fascinating. So let me come back to this, where you mentioned that you enter in bib records 3 months in advance for something that's coming out. Because Cohoc allows you to place holds on items with an on order status, if you get maybe like 15 holds on it, is that what's your holds ratio that you decide?
It changes by material type, by item type. So for print books, we typically, believe it or not, we try to go down to a 4-to-1 ratio.
Wow. Okay.
Because we want to keep the percentage of items that are waiting on hold for more than 30 days. We want to keep that well below 15% of our total holds.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure people aren't waiting, because if you ask me, if I put something on hold and I'm waiting over a month for it, I forgot I put it on hold.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure that number, and 4 is kind of where we've set now, and we've kind of blown that 15% out of the water, but the stuff is still going. It's still checking out.
Yeah.
For DVDs, it's 7 to 10, depending on, if it's part of a series, if there's high demand coming in, and where we are, quite honestly, in the ordering cycle.
Yeah.
If we've got money, we may up that number. And then ebooks and audiobooks, that's almost a case-by-case basis, because if the ebook costs $90, we can't go to a 4-to-1 ratio. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Right.
So, and we do count, we try to count ebooks as one of those 4-to-1 ratio numbers. It's a little subjective at that point. But the ability in Cohoc just to click on that holds queue or hold ratio number and not even have to think, that anybody can go in and do that at any time. And then they can see before they place their order, is there anything else I need to order right now?
Awesome. Boy, I mean, Spencer, I could talk about this for hours. I find this fascinating. You should totally think about presenting at one of the Cohoc conferences, CohoCon in 2018 in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, my arm twisted to go to Portland and try all of their breweries, which I believe were listed in the things about where to go, like in the local information. That might not be so hard to convince me.
Yeah.
Well, we like to make sure the Cohoc users are properly equipped for the conference.
Yeah,
they need to have all the information at their disposal.
Well, and like you said, we could talk forever. This report just breaks the surface. Coming to McKinney, I have some really talented staff here who were able to get in and work with some Bywater staff to create very specific reports. So we can run a report of all of our fiction that actually has science fiction in the 655 line of the MARC record, so we can see where things are miscategorized, and we can also do that with the state of Texas. If we ever wanted to say, hey, what's all of our Texas stuff? Do we have enough? What's the date? We can get really specific on that stuff on demand. So
what is your Blue Bonnet? Is that the name of your
the award winner Blue Bonnet section? Yeah. So there are a few Texas awards. The Blue Bonnet and the 2x2, and there's actually some teen ones too. And some 2x2s are picture books. They're assigned by teachers to read all the 2x2s. And so we actually found that we weren't meeting demand on those. So we ended up doubling the number of copies we were getting. I'm in Florida. Ours is the Sunshine State Readers. And I would be fascinated to know how many students, parents are coming to the library to get those versus just going out and purchasing them. I'd love to see where the demand was on that. Yeah. And I don't exist well in an environment where I can't have that question answered. So I'd have to know. Yeah. Yeah. Spencer, awesome. So for fun, what's your next big project in the library? Well, we just finished our 5-year plan. And that includes getting a mobile library vehicle. So that's the next big project. Nice. The next project involving this data more specifically is genreifying the adult fiction. We have a few broken out. You can see we have science fiction and mystery, but they're not that accurate. And we probably want to break out romance or further break out romance or break out thrillers or African-American novel authors, things like that we want to be able to do. using some of this data and then track it even more at more of a granular level.
Cool.
Awesome. You reading anything good right now?
I am actually going back through Terry Pratchett stuff, reading all of the Night Watch novels. So that's taken me a while, but it's enjoyable.
Excellent.
Well, awesome, Spencer. This has been really rewarding talking to you and kind of hearing about what you're doing there in McKinney and working with some of this analysis on the data. Thank you for sharing that with us today.
No problem. No problem. I feel like a missionary with some of this stuff sometimes. I just want to get the word out. So
I love it.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Right. Preach on.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah. All right.
All right, fabulous. Spencer, have a great day. Nate, thank you. And to all of our listeners out there, we'll see you next time on the Libraries Open podcast.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thanks, Spencer. Bye-bye.